of the journey to emancipation. And how have you liked it so far? Hasn't it been beautiful? Beautiful, beautiful. And today's event is beautiful. And I want to thank the elders and the elder in training, Tika, what they did for you. This is a tribute to our ancestors. And Cotton Bowl Collective, and you see the information before you, and Rootedness, excuse me, began because I'd watch other people and their celebrations of self. And I was concerned about this community. I had friends, and especially when I lived in South Florida, thank you, who had beautiful flags. And I thought that was wonderful as representations of their origins. And I said, I want one of my own. And as a result, and there's a little story behind it, I'm a proud citizen of the United States of America. However, as I admired the flags of my neighbors, I often longed for one of my own, a flag that honored my Afro-Southern heritage. When I began to search, for an artist to bring this idea to life, my eldest daughter told me I had to look no further than our home. My youngest daughter, who was 16 at the time, brought me to tears when she gave life to my dream with her own vision and produced what we've begun to call the Rootedness Flag. And that since this symbol, representing every man, woman, and child who are captives, is not a source of our shame. It is a source of our strength. The artist-styled representation uses rustic imagery because it represents what our ancestors built with their own hands. Her rendering explains not only the Afro-Southern experience in the United States, but the Black experience in the Western Hemisphere. It's truly an American experience. This flag is our affirmation. With it, we honor our ancestors' sacrifices, their beauty, their humanity, their dignity, their talents, and their gifts without fear or shame. And again, Cotton Bowl Collective, the pride of the Afro-South, and rootedness with dignity, without shame. We welcome you to the closing event of Journey to Emancipation. And you've been with us now for about 3 days. You had an opportunity to view that absolutely amazing documentary about Florida's history of enslavement. You also, yesterday, sat and listened to a number of presentations about the state, about our history, about our culture. And I love that, the beauty of these scholars and experts in the field. But today, we're going to the heart and soul of emancipation. You are going to hear the stories from families who've been celebrating emancipation here in this state for generations, and some for over 100 years. With that, we're going to go ahead and begin that journey to emancipation. And as we begin that segment, Alexander, if you could please come to the front. Alexander Williams is going to perform a tune that in more or less embodies the spirit of the conference from the beginning until today. One moment, please.
This button right here in the middle. I'll look over here towards you and I'll tell you. Okay. I want to say good afternoon to all. I am grateful and honored to be a part of this wonderful celebration. I want to give a very big thanks to Dr. Natalie King Pedroso for inviting me to come and to sing for you today. The song that I will be singing for you today is entitled Make Them Hear You from the famous Broadway musical Ragtime. Due to some technical difficulties, I will sing the piece a cappella for you all. Go out and tell the story, let it echo far and wide, make them hear you, make them hear you. How justice was our battle and how justice was denied, make them hear you, make them hear you. And say to those who blame us for the way we chose to fight, that sometimes there are battles that are more than black or white. And I could not put down my sword when justice was my right. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. Go out and tell our story to your daughters and your sons. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. And tell them in our struggle we were not the only ones. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. Your sword can be a sermon or the power of the pen. Teach every child to raise his voice, and then, my brothers, then will justice be demanded by 10 million righteous men. Make them hear you. When they hear you, I'll be near you. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Alex, I'm trying to catch my breath. Okay. I need time to collect myself after that offering. And folks, again, it goes to the spirit. And that's FAMU back there, okay? That goes to the spirit of what we do. What we do. All right? Beautiful, beautiful. And with that opening, we are going to start in earnest. Our chance, we're going to have to hear those stories from these very important culture bearers. And the first will be, and we have 3 counties, and I'm deeply moved, actually 4 counties that are represented here today. You have Jefferson County, Gadsden County, Madison County, and Leon County. We all sit here on the Florida border. And again, neighbors, thank you so much for coming here today to share these stories with our attendees. And in this order, from Jefferson County, we'll hear from Miss Essie Norton, Miss Jacqueline C. Brooks, and Mr. Franklin Brooks. And I'll introduce each one. Miss Essie Norton is a member of the Community Friends of Jefferson County Incorporated organization of Monticello, Florida. She was born and raised in Monticello. She and her husband, Otis Norton, have been married all of 47 years. Blessing. Miss Norton has traveled all over the world with her husband and two sons, Otis and Gerald. Her husband served in the United States Air Force, and after Mr. Norton retired from the military, they happily returned home to Monticello to spend much needed time with family and friends. Miss Norton worked for the Department of Revenue as a revenue administrator, and she's been retired for 3 years and living her best life. She's now really able to enjoy reading, gardening, exercising, and cooking her favorite dishes. She also enjoys spending quality time with her 6 grandchildren. Her church home is the Restored Glory Christian Center in Monticello, Florida, and she looks forward to traveling the next couple of years with her husband. And please, Miss Norton, come share your story. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for inviting us. When our community friends, when we met last month, and we talked about this on actually coming over and sharing our stories of how we celebrated the 20th of May. And I'm just going to take you back a little further and tell you a little bit about my family. Washington Gallon was my grandfather, and my great grandfather was enslaved, and they came in through Georgia, through Savannah, Georgia, and they made their way down through Quitman, Georgia, and then on down into Florida, and settled in the Asheville area. All of his children, my great grandfather, all of his siblings, children settled there, and the pride of the Gallon estate was owning property, which was so relevant during that time. Property was like gold to my relatives, my grandparents, and other community members. It was, if you get property, you have something. And so they all settled, most of them settled actually in the Asheville area, the brothers and the sisters. And they farm. That was their major crop, was cotton, tobacco, corn, and they also raised on pigs, hogs, and cows. And they made a good living, you know. But the hub of everything was the church. That was the hub. And that's when, the 20th of May came into play. When I was a young girl, I could remember going to the church. I mean, it was such excitement because everybody came. The women would have they would make the cakes and the pies, and, the men would get the actual meat, the protein together. They would kill a cow or a hog and have the chickens, and nothing was hardly ever bought from the store except probably sugar and salt. But the flour was, they took that to the mill. The corn was taken to the mill, and everything. The oil that came from the pig. So everything was then produced, and they brought it to the church. And on that day, the 20th of May, I can remember going out, and they would have the big black pots, kettles we call now, and they would, fry up the chicken and the fish, and we would have all this food. But it was a sense of community. We would play games. I can remember playing on softball games, and my uncle he would narrate it, and he would be the pitcher. And I mean, it was just good times, good family time. Everyone, not everyone was related, but it was so many of the Gallons till you thought that was it. There was nothing but family there, but all in all, it was a celebration because they didn't talk a lot about, on slavery, but we knew about emancipation because we celebrated every year. So we knew about that. We would have programs leading up to that, on the young people would put on skits, and, it was just a good time, but it was an educational time. it wasn't just a time to come together and eat food. We were educated on Emancipation Proclamation, what happened, because it was close to their hearts, because they know what their parents had told them. And my great great grandfather, they were enslaved. So they had passed that information on down through the generations. But now we tend not to even talk about, Emancipation Proclamation, but my partner there, my brother-in-law, is going to talk about what we're doing now, because we're want to carry that tradition on, for the next generation. But it was the elders of the church. They were the ones who actually, put things together, and we knew it was going to be at our church. That was the hub of the community. Everyone was going to come. We had another part of the community called Over the River, and it was basically plantations, because Jefferson County basically is surrounded by plantations. And back then, that's mostly where everyone worked. You worked on the plantation. If you were lucky enough, you had your own little spot of land, but the plantation was the hub. So we would have people from over the river that would come from, miles around to come to New Bethel to actually celebrate. So, but it was our elders who actually kept it going, and put everything together. But it was just a great gathering, and it was the church that kept this together. Now, not so much, but we still have people that's close to their heart, that history there of, the Emancipation Proclamation. So, I'm not going to stay long, because we do have two other people that are coming from Jefferson County, but um, we just need to pass along what we know to our family, to our grandkids. They studied in school, but it's still not like having that personal touch of a family member sharing how they came along, how they celebrated, and the meaning of, the 20th. We still say the 20th of May. We still call it that, but we need to call it what it really is, Emancipation Proclamation. So, these kids get everything. They Google. So, everything. So we want to be correct when we're talking about the 20th of May and what it is, what it represents, and how we can continue that to the next generation. So thank you for having me, and this is a great event.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Norton. Thank you so much. Ms. Jacqueline Seabrooks. Ms. Seabrooks was born and raised in a small family farm in rural Jefferson County, Florida. She still lives in the family home where she grew up. She's a proud, excuse me, graduate of Jefferson County High School class of 1979. She graduated from Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Health Information Management and, excuse us, holds a Master of Social Work degree from the Florida State University. She's one of the founding members of the nonprofit Community Friends of Jefferson County, which was instrumental in bringing an Emancipation Day celebration back to their local community. After a long work history in various healthcare settings, Ms. Seabrooks now works for the local property appraiser's office. This career change dovetails perfectly with her plans at this transitional time in her life. Her interest in history, work with a local historical archaeologist, and other local historians has led her to create the Cemetery Restoration and Preservation Society of North Florida. The Society's purpose is to document and memorialize the legacy of families in Jefferson County and surrounding areas by working to identify, restore, and preserve cemeteries and their history. Ms. Seabrooks thinks Maya Angelou said it best in an interview with the American Academy of Achievement, quote, "You can't really know where you're going until you know where you've been," end quote. Ms. Seabrooks, Ms. Jacqueline Seabrooks, please come and share with us. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you, Dr. Pedrosa. Some of the things that Miss Essie Norton has already said, because we grew up in the same community, I do have a little bit more information because I grew up in what we call New Bethel and what we also call Elizabeth Dills. I grew up with my grandparents and my dad and Elizabeth Dills. My mom lived in New Bethel, and I did grow up on a small working farm. Let me let you know that. Um, and what that means is by the time I was probably 9 years old, and if anybody has grown up on a farm know what a hamper is, I was able to pick a hamper of peas, but I could only carry one row. By the time I got to middle school and high school, I could carry two. And that meant I had to carry them as quick as my cousin, who would be all over that field at some point. So we had peas and tobacco, and we didn't have shade tobacco like Gadsden County. We were out there in the sun in the field, putting them on sticks and stringing them. Just to give you a little history of me. So that's where I come from, and that has helped me to become the person that I am. I had a mom that said all work is honorable. If you're going to dig a ditch, be the best ditch digger there is. And that's what I have in my heart and my spirit now. So I'm not afraid of work. Some of the stuff we do now sitting behind the desk all day is pretty easy compared to some of the stuff that I've done in the past. But I appreciate all of that. So as a child, I remember we would go to school that day. One of the things that we looked forward to was I got to ride the bus that went by New Bethel that day. The bus driver, and to put this in frame, we were in segregated schools until I was in the fourth grade. So she would take us to a field that was, now it's covered with pine trees, but then it was an open field, and she would let us get off the bus. We got to socialize with each other, and we got to play. And at some point, when we had done that for a little while, we would get back on the school bus, and there were some of us that got an opportunity to stop at the church, like Essie was talking about. And like she said, the women had been preparing all day. Now, frame this in a situation where we didn't have smartphones. Our television only got one channel on a good day. Most of us didn't have cars. So our social time, even though we were required to get our lesson, was when we were at school, when we were at church. We got to see people, we got to meet people from other communities. And I was lucky because I could move between Elizabeth Dills and New Bethel. So I looked forward to being there and seeing relatives and friends. Um, my family, the Seabrookses, not big as the Gallons, but the Seabrookses, the Pecks, the Russells, those are my family from Jefferson County, believed to have come from South Carolina and maybe Georgia. But I remember even as a child, okay, I remember even as a child looking forward to that day. And I think now I still say 20th of May because that's what I kind of grew up with. And that has a special meaning to me because if there was nothing else that we knew that was the day that the slaves was freed. And it was important. And you have to also understand, again, like Essie said, we were surrounded by farms and plantations, working plantations. But those folks were going to take that day off. They were not going to be, if they didn't work, they didn't get paid. My mom was a seasonal worker, which meant that whatever was growing, peaches, wherever she was going to get on a bus and she was going to Adel, Georgia, or wherever that bus was going to pick peaches. If she didn't work that day, she wasn't going to get paid, but she was going to be at the 20th of May. She was going to help the ladies get the potato salad ready and the cakes and the pies, whatever that was, she was taking that day. As I got older, she was fortunate enough, if we will say that, to work at a plant nursery. So she didn't have to catch the bus to go wherever in Georgia or wherever they were picking something that day. But that was important because that was a day that they felt important enough to take off, to celebrate. And I remember the wash pots with the lard. That's how they cooked the fish. The one thing Essie didn't mention was every time there was that galvanized trash can that they were going to make the lemonade in. And they didn't have the bags of ice to put in it. It was always a big block of ice that came from somewhere and an ice pick that they were going to chip it up. And for some reason, I know some people will probably say, ugh, now, but back in the day, there was always the lemonade maker. I don't remember who it was at New Bethel, but he was going to go cut a limb from a tree, clean that limb, branch, whatever you want to call it, scale it down with his knife, his pocket knife, and he was going to stir it. I'm going to tell you, that was the best lemonade you'd ever had. So, as a child, and this is through a child's eye, that was a time for us to come together, to learn, to celebrate, but also to be community. We were about community. If you know, I was a sophomore in FAMU before I realized that I had grown up poor. Okay, because I had everything I needed and some of the things I wanted. But if one house had, everybody in that community had. When it was time to kill hogs this time of year, November, December, when it was cold enough, you saw 3 or 4 families come together. The men were going to kill the hogs and process them out, and the women were going to cut up that meat for the lard that we probably used for 20th of May. And everybody was going to leave that event with something for their house. My granddaddy's idea of a garden was an acre, 2 acres of something. And I would say, Dad, why, even with my dad, why are you planting all this? Somebody could use it. Somebody could eat it. That's just how we grew up. So I think the next person that's going to come before you, I don't want to take too much time, will talk about how we're celebrating now in Jefferson County. And I'm glad we were able to bring it back because I think it was a very important part. And as the older people kind of fell away and weren't able to do it as much, we kind of discontinued it. And we brought it back, and I think people look forward to it. I know I do. I enjoy it. But thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you so much.
Beautiful. Our next speaker is Mr. Franklin Brooks. And Mr. Brooks was born in Monticello, Florida, and was a member of the last class to graduate from Howard Academy before desegregation. After graduation, he attended FAMU for 3 years, majoring in business management with a minor in business administration. He started his career in law enforcement with the Jefferson County Sheriff Department, where he worked for 10 years. Mr. Brooks then went on to work for the Department of Corrections for 20 years, where he served as an instructor for 10. After 29 years of service in law enforcement, Mr. Brooks retired in 2007. He currently spends his time volunteering with the Democratic Party to register voters and working in his church. Mr. Franklin Brooks, thank you.
Okay. I want to thank you all for having me. I thank you all so much. These are my parents. This is Frank J. Brooks, and this is my mother, Rebecca Brooks. I wasn't fortunate enough to live on the farms and all that stuff. I grew up what we call the city part of Monticello. But we worked. We did a lot of work. I used to work in the peanut fields. I used to work in the nurseries. I used to work to the dog track. I mean, some of you all might remember the dog track in Jefferson County. But anyway, we started our organization, which is the Community Friends of Jefferson County, in 2009. I'm sorry, 2008. And one of our first objectives was, as Jackie said, was we wanted to bring back the 20th of May. By me growing up in the city limits of Monticello, we never celebrated the 20th of May. We never did. And my parents told me about it. My mom was born in 1916. My father was born in 1912. So it had died, really, in Jefferson County. The 20th of May had died, and that was one of our first objectives. We were one of some of the founding members of the Jefferson County, of the Community Friends of Jefferson County. And we started in 2009, and it's been going on until now, and we have it. And one of the big things is this, is that our kids know very little in this area. And I'm sure it's in all, I think it's 4 counties that you named. They know very little about the 20th of May. Juneteenth is all right. That's okay. But this is when we found out in this area that we have been freed. The sign that says 20th of May, 1865. And this is something that we need to let our children know. Let them know about what this is all about. And this is nothing to be ashamed of. This is something to be proud of. I love my people. I love what we do. But I tell you, we need to do better about doing things within our community for each other, loving each other. And the church should always be the pillar of our community. Always should be, because we have nowhere else to go. When you think about it, we have nowhere else to go. In most of our communities, the church is the mainstay within our communities. I was just talking with my brother, and we were talking about some things that's going on within our areas and within what's going on within our counties and within the states and stuff. We are some strong people. We are really some strong people. My mama used to always say, baby, one thing about us, if things got so bad and we couldn't have nothing to eat, we could take that grass and cook it up and we could eat it. You know, we could. We are some resilient people, very resilient. We can do anything that we want to do, anything that we set our mind to do, we can do it. No doubt in my mind, we can do it. We are some strong people, very, very strong people. She would always tell me, she said, son, one thing about it, every tub got to set on its own bottom. Every tub's got to set on its own bottom. And if some of y'all don't know what that means, it means that no matter what, you got to bring yourself up. Can't look for somebody else to do it. You got to bring yourself up. And I tell people all the time, I like to say this, that don't nibble on me, swallow me whole. Don't nibble on me, swallow me whole. And what I mean by that is this. Tell me what it is. I don't like folk to beat around the bush when they're talking to me. Tell me what it is. And if you can tell me what it is, I can do it. Like James Brown said, just open up the door. You just open up the door. I'll get it myself. I'll get it myself. Like I said, I love my people. I have 2 brothers, 1 sister, and we were all raised right there in Monticello. Right in Monticello. And I'm a small business owner. You know, so like I said, we can do things. When I was growing up, my father, I can't remember him ever being up, walking around and you know, like people do. He had a stroke. I think I was about 5 years old. My mom basically raised us. She worked at the place they call the crate mill. I don't know whether anybody in this community know what we're talking about. The crate mill. She worked there. But she was a go-getter. One thing about she said, son, whatever you do in life, if you make $1, put a dime back. I was not a farmer, but I tell you what, anything that I set my mind to do, I can do it. And I tell my children this, always trust in the Lord. Trust in the Lord. And do what you can do, and he'll be behind you all the time. I love being here today. I love everything that you all have. This is something great, and it should continue because this is what we have to celebrate, the 20th of May. This is when we were freed in this area. This is when we found out within this area that we were free people. I thank y'all for having me, and I love each and every one of you. Thank you.
And again, if we could hear one more time for our family from Jefferson County, Florida. Thank you so much, Jefferson County. And next, we have a representative from, and I know at one time, and probably still is, the blackest county in the state of Florida, and that's Gadsden County. And I say that with pride. I have strong roots in Gadsden, as well as Leon County. I claim them all. And Dr. Reginald C. James, and people in this community know of him as the former superintendent of schools in Gadsden County, has come here today to talk with us about his experiences and Emancipation Day. Dr. Reginald James is a lifelong resident of Gadsden County and has an extensive, exemplary record as an educator and community leader. His career in education spans more than 30 years, with experience in teaching, counseling, and administration, ranging from elementary school through the university level. He holds undergraduate and graduate degrees in education from Florida A&M University, with extensive training in educational leadership. Dr. James began his illustrious educational career as an elementary school teacher. Over 3 decades, he served as an elementary school teacher, elementary school counselor, career education specialist, district director of vocation and adult education, consultant, that is, for the Florida Department of Education, director of the Federal Head Start program for Florida State University, associate dean of the School of General Studies for FAMU, and superintendent of Gadsden County Public Schools, where he made a number of advancements, a number of great achievements there. He is a devoted Christian and serves as a steward and trustee at Palace AME Church in Havana, Florida. He's married to the former Betty Roberts, and they have 2 children, 4 grandchildren. His community involvement is very extensive and includes the following. He's a member of the Gadsden County Hospice Advisory Board, a member of the Swanee River Area Council of Boy Scouts of America, and a member, former president of the Gadsden County chapter of FAMU alumni, a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, a member and former president of Gadsden County Men of Action, and a member of Havana Kiwanis. So with no further ado, I bring Reginald C. James to the microphone to share with us about emancipation. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Give her a nice round of applause. She took up all my time telling people about me. Well, let's talk a little bit about Gadsden County. She told me to just talk about what Emancipation Day meant to me in terms of what we did in Gadsden County. I could tell you that in three minutes, 2 minutes actually. But let me talk a little bit about Gadsden County because she reflected a little bit about it. You know, I was at the Museum of Black African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. And I was just looking around, looking for everything I could find. It was such a beautiful place. How many of you have actually been there yet? Did you see the picture of Gadsden County in there? It's in there. I found Gadsden County. Guess what was there? It was a picture of a black man with shade tobacco. Gadsden County was the hub of shade tobacco in the South. It made a lot of people wealthy. A lot of people worked in shade tobacco. So it has a rich history. It made the National Museum of Black History. But let me talk about my experiences there. Because actually, I'm old enough to have worked in shade tobacco. I began as a primer in shade tobacco where you have to lean over and get the leaves from the bottom and your back hurt when you finish. I messed around and worked so hard, I got a promotion. They let me drive the mule. You know, the barge, it brings the tobacco into the barn. That was a good job. I was proud of that. until that mule raised his tail. Oh, boy, that mule would raise his tail. My goodness gracious. Whew. The wind that would come out of there, I could taste it. When I ate lunch, it just stick to you. So I didn't want that job after a while. I finally got promoted to the barn, so I got out of the sun. But yeah, it was really, people ask me, so what do you think about that, Reg? Well, you know the thing about it is, it taught me the essence of hard work. It really did. And it also let me know that was something I didn't want to do the rest of my life. So it was negative motivation for me. And so that's kind of the history of tobacco in Gadsden County. So with that being said, I mean, Gadsden is unique. Everybody here, I hope, has been to Gadsden County. Have you not? Okay, if you should come. I mean, it's a majority black county. It's the only majority black county in the state of Florida. If Gadsden County had anything to do with it, Jesse Jackson would be president of the United States. That was the only county he won in the state of Florida. We have a large majority of the elected officials in Gadsden County are African American. And we have a thriving county. It's doing well. Okay. We have a thriving county. It's doing well. You're very proud. I'm very proud of what the people of Gadsden County have done and how they're achieving and the things they're doing and how they're growing. We have so many great Gadsden Countyans around. I see we have Judge Tiffany. She'll talk. But anyway, we got great people from Gadsden County. She has roots there. But nevertheless, what it meant to me, Gadsden County had two major, well, you could just think now, if it's African American, it's an African American town. They had huge May 20th Emancipation Day celebrations. They had two. They had one, and I want to make sure I give these people credit. They had one in the western part of the county in a place called Sawdust. And they had a family called the Gunn family. And the Gunn family would feed, I don't know, thousands of, just a tremendous amount of people would come through there. And you know what they say about, you heard that song Shirley Chisholm has, well, I mean Shirley Caesar has, you know, we got beans, greens, tomatoes, well, they had everything. They had everything there, and she would feed people, but what they featured was, they had fried chicken like nobody else could fry. So in Gadsden County, they had a place called Divine Grace. I don't know if you remember that. And then they had one over here. They brought it over to Bethel Baptist. They bought that little center. They had a place. In that place, they had some chicken they had some fried chicken that Bojangles or Popeyes couldn't do anything with. But that was the feature of their celebration. You want to go out there because you wanted to get that fried chicken. And they fed thousands of people out there. And then they had the other one was on the western end of the county at the James's place. Nora and Bruce James, they had a huge celebration. There's no relationship. We're not related, but they had a huge celebration there. And what they featured was, if you could stay there long enough, they were going to bring out the freshwater fish. And you could get the brim and the speckled perch, and you could get a big one on your plate, and that was something special. Those individuals did that for year after year after year. People would come from near and far. Even Joe Bullock would talk about, what he was going to do. He would say, I'm going over to the Jameses to celebrate May 20th. So May 20th in Gadsden County was just really celebrated in a big way. Virtually everybody would go. I would make plans from the morning to go over to Sawdust for a little while and then go over to the east side for a little while. So I could just make both parts of the county. So I commend those individuals for what they were doing. As I said, it was a great celebration. Those celebrations have waned because I believe they waned because nobody could serve that many people for that long without some assistance. I don't care how much you love the community. If you're feeding that many people every year, somebody has to provide you some financial assistance or you won't be able to do that. And it took a tremendous amount of manpower and a lot of financial assistance. So I hope I've given them credit. So if somebody hears this video, the Gunn family and the James family, I mean, they fed thousands of people. So if somebody wants to help them get that started back and provide them with the manpower, maybe they'll consider it. Thank you so much for having me.
So much.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, Gadsden. Thank you. And now that you mentioned her, if she could please stand, our judge, Second Circuit Judge Tiffany Baker. That's right. With those strong Gadsden County roots. Okay, thank you so much. And with that, Dr. Ray Mobley. Dr. Ray Mobley, when we look at Madison County, is Dr. Mobley here? You're next. You're next on the program, sir. Okay. You're next. And, you know, an institution. He is certainly an institution. Dr. Ray Mobley is a professor emeritus at FAMU. He is licensed to practice veterinary medicine in Florida and is a diplomate of the American College of Veterinary Preventive Medicine. Dr. Mobley was born and raised in Madison, Florida, and graduated from Madison County Training School in 1967. He received his BS degree in animal science from FAMU, the DVM from Tuskegee, and the MPH from Tulane. While a student at FAMU, he was chosen for Who's Who among students on American college campuses. He's affiliated with numerous professional organizations, including the American Veterinary Medicine Association, the Florida Veterinary Medicine Association, and the Big Bend Veterinary Medicine Association. He's a diplomate of the American College of Veterinary Preventive Medicine. Dr. Mobley is a retired lieutenant colonel, having served in the U.S. Veterinary Corps for 21 years. His military awards include the Legion of Merit, the Joint Services Meritorious Service Award, the Army Meritorious Service Award, the Army Commendation Medal, and he was inducted into the Order of Military Medical Merit. He's a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Alpha Kappa Mu National Honor Society, the Rotary Club of Tallahassee South Side, and the Tallahassee chapter of 100 Black Men of America. He's married to Donna Mobley, and they have 3 children and 4 granddaughters. Dr. Mobley, you know, again, please come, please come. Again, FAMU pride. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pedrosa. I really, really appreciate this. This is really an emotional time for me. It takes me back, but it takes me back very, very proudly. This is going to be a 2-part presentation, Dr. Pedrosa. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Reverend Barfield after my remarks. And again, I thank you for the privilege and the honor of speaking before you. Well, I'd like to just share with you a little bit more about me. I am a product of the farm. I grew up on a 20-acre farm. My parents farmed 20 acres. We would leave the farm, go to school, come back, do our chores, and during the summers, we would work on the farm, and then we'd leave our farm and go work on someone's farm, and we would share our monies. There was no such thing as, you know, this is yours. You know, we pooled it together, and that was the source of our what we would do for the next year, buying our school clothes and those kind of things for the next year. These products that you see here, we worked all of those. Cotton, corn, tobacco, watermelon, small garden crops, and all of that we did in order to subsist. My mom, probably a 6th grade education. My dad, maybe a 3rd grade education. But one thing they did, they made sure that we all went to school. There was no getting around going to school. We walked to school. Our first schools, we walked 3 miles. to this two-room school. And then we went to the segregated school in Madison. I graduated from the segregated school, second in my class. Had the opportunity to come to Florida A&M, and they took me under their wings. Graduated from there, went to Tuskegee, took me under their wings, made me realize, okay, that you can do whatever you wanted to do. And that was the spirit that we had at in Madison. I was a product of the community. My family, I consider myself a extension of the community. That community was my family. When they talk about it takes a community to raise a child, I'm a product of that, I tell you that. There was nothing that I could do in that community that would get around my parents knowing about it, because everyone in that community made sure that we were taken care of. So I'm just so appreciative of that. In terms of the celebration of 20th of May, yeah, we did that. I can remember us coming together. I don't know if you remember the brown boxes. My mom was a great cook, and she would put together, egg custard pies and cakes and that kind of thing, and we would get together, and we would celebrate, as a community. Did not have the appreciation that back then, but certainly it was such a sentimental time for us. And as we continue to develop and grow, certainly developed a much more appreciation for what that all meant. I do stand on the shoulders of giants, and I realize that as we talk about, the sacrifices that our foreparents made, we just got to say, we just thank God from whence we've come. And we know that it was His grace and His mercy that brought us this far. And we are proud people. And our legacy, we need to treasure, and we need to make sure that it goes forward. And I'm not going to get into how we celebrate that in Madison. I'm going to let Reverend Barfield do that for us. But we continue to appreciate that legacy, and we're going to do all that we can to make sure that it's passed on to our next generation. So I'm going to ask Reverend Barfield to come and share that with us.
Thank you, Madam Presida, and thank you, Dr. Mobley, and thank you to all of those that spoke proud too. And I'm excited about just being here because 20th of May means so much to me. It means so much to me because it's our heritage. It's what Grandma talked to us about. It's what my grandmother said to us. She said to me that doesn't matter what job you got, 20th of May, you knock off. And you come and everybody have a good time together. You celebrate. And my name, is Albert Barfield. I'm a resident of Madison. I was born there 1960. I used to think I was a young man, but I can tell the difference now. But, and I went to school there. And as I think back over the 20th of May, during the time I was coming up, it was celebrated in church communities and just regular residential communities where families and groups would get together. In 1989, I became the president of the Madison County Recreation Association, which was a product of those recreation centers that was funded by the federal government to bring recreation to the black community since they couldn't go to the other side of town. you remember the separate but equal, so we was funded that, and the community worked together. We had to pay for it. It wasn't given to us, and they worked their fingers to the bone to pay for it. But when I become president, I asked the broader community, let's come together and do a big celebration. And so, and being a preacher, that made it a little bit easier because you already had people that was in support of it. So the pastors bought in kind of slow, but the general community, they was for it, especially the older people. They was for coming together rather than doing it in our individual communities and our individual churches. We came together countywide. And so I called a couple pastors together, and I asked them to let's plan it. I said, let's plan it. I said, let's start off with a parade. So when we started off that Saturday morning with a parade, and we named it just what it had been called, the 20th of May, but we added to it 20th of May Jubilee Celebration. And so we added a parade. There had never been a parade a part of it, but we added the parade. We got the schools to work with us and stuff, and we also stepped it up. When we got to the field, we had the field festivities. The next year, we stepped it up even a little bit higher, and we started doing 3 days of it. Friday night, we do the seafood and fashion show. And during that Friday night, we will select a 20th of May queen. And then that Saturday morning, we'll start the parade and the field festivities. And the field festivities would include the car show, the motorcycle show. I may not be calling all the right name. I think they call it the bike show, I think. We had the gospel singers from the churches coming singing all day long, and we would have a good time. All day long, we'd have a good time. We had competition games for the children, croquet sack race, wheelbarrow race, and much of these games was a part of the heritage as it was passed down to us. That's what they did. We had the competition games where the boys would go out and flip and stuff and try to get trophies. And so everybody's excited. But the big win in it all is that you were staying in touch with your history, and it educated the next generation. But even more so, every age group was there. You didn't have the gaps. And so anytime we can all come together as a big family, we all win. But we would celebrate all that day with the softball tournaments. We would also have all of the pots out cooking. Matter of fact, I still cook the pots of chicken and rice now. I cooked the pot for Dr. Mobley, which is my successor at the Recreation Association, and he's going above and beyond. And please take your hat off to him, please, Dr. Mobley. He's really doing a good job in Madison. We would continue that celebration on Sunday with the carryover games. It wouldn't be the big eating like we had. But on that Saturday, we would also have vendors to come out. So we'd have a row of vendors. And like you got buses here, we would have a bus that come from Miami, Florida, and a bus, I'm not really sure where that second one come from. I almost want to say it came from the Orlando area, and I think they swung through Jacksonville, but I'm not really sure. But I do know we used to have a crew coming through. But the pandemic paused us. It didn't stop us, but it paused us. And so Dr. Mobley is working to keep everything going and get everything restarted back up. And so we all excited about it. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to meet all of you. And I would love for us to continue this. I would like to continue this. I would like for us to sit down to the table, sisterhood and brotherhood, and let's talk and let's blow it up for what it really is. It started out an eruption of jubilant celebration because a people learned that they had jumped a milestone. They wouldn't have to be sold no more. And so they celebrated, they marked that day, the 20th of May. So let us keep it going. And thank you, Madam Presider, for this time and opportunity.
Okay, thank you so much, Reverend Barfield. Thank you for those reflections. Thank you. And this segment of the program is our tribute segment. And earlier we talked about the tribute to the ancestors and elders, but here, Cotton Bowl Collective grew out of an intergenerational desire to commemorate the heritage, culture, rituals, and contributions of African descent communities with deep roots in the American South. We officially launched Cotton Bowl Collective in 2020 with the Rootedness line last March. And if Tika is here, she's still here? Okay, she was here earlier. She had on her Rootedness gear, so you could see what she looks like. With that, our 2021 installation, because we had a ceremony featuring Rootedness and the Rootedness Culture Bearer recognition. That was in 2020. For 2021, this installation, we selected one honoree who embodies the spirit of rootedness, Mr. Hunter Hill Jr., and he's right there. And if you go to the Cotton Bowl Collective website, you'll actually see a video with Mr. Hill. You know, we have an interview and talk about the history of emancipation in Leon County. He is a walking textbook. Mr. Hunter Hill, again, is this year's Spirit of Rootedness Culture Bearer honoree. When we received the request to host this event, we could not do it without celebrating Mr. Hill's valuable contributions to this area's history and culture. Mr. Hunter Hill was born and raised in Tallahassee, Florida, and educated here. After serving in the United States Army, he later earned a Bachelor of Science degree at FAMU. He used his credentials and experience to educate a number of young people in Leon County in the areas of construction and industrial education. He is married to Mrs. Phyllis Hill. Today, listen to this revered elder as he discusses the significance of May 20th, Emancipation Day in the state of Florida, in addition to the traditions related to this special day that his community has practiced for over 150 years. We honor Mr. Hill on the Emancipation Day Remembrance today because he's one of this area's most significant culture bearers. Not only is he an expert on African American history and cultural traditions in Leon County, but he's also a member of an esteemed line of drummers whose traditional drumming has been featured at Emancipation Day, May 20th, 1865, in Leon County since 1867. We salute you, Mr. Hill, this year's Spirit of Rootedness Culture Bearer recipient, and thank you for teaching us and helping us hold our heads higher. And what we are also going to do, I don't want to just have you hear me lift up this great elder and ancestor, well, not ancestor figure, but elder for our community who's given so much. I want someone to come here and talk to you about his relationship as a mentor to young people here in Leon County and passing that gift along. Brian, I'm going to bring you up. And Brian Forbane, those beautiful young people you heard drumming at the beginning, those are Brian's young people. He's the one, again, helping our young people. He's a Tallahassee native, director of Capitol Battery Line, graduate of Rickards High School. He's held a lifelong passion for the performing arts, and he studied under the direction of Dr. Reginald James, legacy percussion instructor at FAMU. Brian has been integral to teaching and creating unique styles and identities for North Florida and South Georgia marching bands and drum lines, and he has awarded them with his talent, which in turn they have been producing award-winning shows. He's provided workshops and clinics for bands and drum lines in South and Central Florida, including Deerfield, Fort Lauderdale, Pompano, Orlando, and Tampa areas. He's also an up-and-coming leader in the Tallahassee area who's committed to provide solutions for the children in our community through drumming with a focus on whole child services. He teaches them positive thinking processes, educates the youth about their civil rights and liberties, instructs them how to limit conflict when defending themselves, and encourages their commitments to community service. And I asked Brian a question: how long has your community had a celebration? And we're talking about Emancipation Day, and which traditions and rituals are practiced? And quote, this was his response: independently, I've celebrated the 20th of May since 2015. I was dating my wife at the time and was invited to her family's gatherings. Her grand matrilineal line, the Richardsons and Givens of Lake Jackson, and grand patrilineal family, the Strongs of Havana, have a long over 60 years of storied traditions celebrating the 20th of May. Now the celebration continues with barbecue, music, inebriations, and the spirit of annual family reunion. And he finishes with, it was then, and he talks about hearing the drumming, and incorporating that drumming into his own work and his teaching. And he mentions specifically the traditions of the Colson, Hill, Johnson, and Williams families. And Mr. Hill, it's noted there. So again, Brian wants to take the mic and his own personal tribute to Mr. Hunter Hill. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. Briefly, before I get into my spiel, I'm looking out amongst the faces, and I do this at every family gathering or every gathering that we have, because I'm really passionate about connecting our present sense to our ancient past. And I'm actually stumbling upon things like, example, we're actually in the foothills of what Tallahassee originally was called Enhika, right? Tallahassee's original name is Enhika by the Appalachian Native Americans that lived in this area, right? And then when Andrew Jackson came in and colonized it, he renamed it Tallahassee for the old town and old fields. I say that to say I share all of this with our young ones, and I ask them when they go to their family functions to look out amongst your family, look out amongst the crowd, and survey the faces. And then when you go into your history books, be amazed, because the remnant of all of history's past is still living today. And so what really drew me to say that was I looked at your name tags, and I see your last name is Mann. And I am really proud of my heritage, and I know that my grandparents' last name was also Mann, so we are definitely going to have a conversation. Okay, that also segues into this history. 2 years ago, the Riley House reached out to my organization, Capitol Battery Line. I'm the director. My name is Brian Forbing. I'm the director of Capitol Battery Line, and you are already heard a great explanation of what we do, and hopefully some of you saw some of what we do. Judge Tiffany Baker has had the experience of us on the campaign trail, actually. We don't endorse any candidates. I just want to say that so that way we don't get in trouble. We don't endorse any candidates, but we make sure that we provide an opportunity for our community to have conversations across the table regardless of who you are. So when COVID happened, one of the things that we wanted to do was reinvent our Lost Parade experiences. So COVID caused our City of Tallahassee Springtime Tallahassee Parade, the 4th of July celebrations that we had, as well as the FAMU Homecoming, FSU Homecoming, and the Winter Festival Lights Parade to all be canceled. And while CBL didn't get any credit for this, we were the visionaries to recreate the parade experience by risking life and limb, by putting drummers on the back of a trailer and driving through regular day traffic with flashes on at 20 miles an hour and drumming with live music. So that way people could still feel some sense of community and have a feeling of the parade. That segued into us doing a birthday celebration, literally in Mr. Hill's backyard, like literally. Hillcrest Lane is right next to you, and we were performing for an old friend, actually. And when the Raleigh House reached out, all of this history started making connections, or all of these events started connecting for me. And so they reached out to us to ask if we could work on this documentary to document Mr. Hill's family's legacy with the May 20th Emancipation Beat. Long story short, coming to learn it, we come to know the name is Runnin'. And if you guys heard the beat earlier, you can recall when you speed the beat up, that's why they call it running. Okay? Now let me take you back a little bit. The first 13 students of FAMU, we don't know their names for some reason, I don't know why, but I theorize that they likely came from Frenchtown. And these first 13 would have been the remnants of the emancipated individuals from Tallahassee. Okay, stay with me. I theorize, and I'm going to be working passionately to prove this theory, that one or two of these members are Mr. Hill's ancestors. And the reason why I say that is because he has a beat called Runnin' that he was taught by his grandfather, and his grandfather was taught by his grandfather. This beat has been living on for 165 years. Mr. Hill is 86 years old now. He's the youngest of his family preserving this beat. And it all struck me to learn the Johnson family, Hill family, Colson family, and Williams family collectively came up with this beat. Well, my mom's name is a Forbing, so that made me a Forbing because my dad, how things work, right? But technically I would be a Williams. So I instantly was like, oh man, I gotta be related to these Williams because my father is born and raised in Tallahassee. Nope, but I was actually connected to the Johnson family through bloodline. And so it just astonishes me to find that this beat somehow, through the universe, through the good God's graces, found me and bestowed me to be the next vanguard. And I am extremely excited about the next 100 years and protecting this beat and making sure that our community continues to play this and continues to honor our history. Mr. Hill, if you can come on up. I want to bring you up, and I also want to let you know that I'm working on a project to show that our family's legacy helped actually create what we know as the March of 100 today. I said running, right? So when you speed this beat up, there is a grouping in what we play as what we call 9 or the Rattler cadence. And that grouping, actually, I was able to decipher that to be actually taken from or a sample from running. And it's just funny that we're running on the field, but we call it rattling. And I would just like to introduce Mr. Hill again, say thank you for all of what you've done for this community. Thank you for including me on this project, and thank you for reconnecting me to my family.
My name is Hunter Hill Jr. I am descendants of Florida slaves. I am descendants of Florida slaves. Now, my grandparents, my sisters, my brothers, my aunts, my uncles, all the people in my community were descendants of slaves. When I went to school, all the students were descendants of slaves. When I went to Florida A&M University, most of the students were descendants of slaves. When I went to the Army in South Carolina, the guys I met with were descendants of slaves. When I went to Germany, I met some descendants of American slaves. When I went to Holland, Amsterdam, I met some descendants of American slaves. Now listen, I have never heard anyone say they was of African descent, descendants of American slaves. Now, I want to say about the 20th of May and about running. Now, this is a drum beat that started after slavery. Yeah, after slavery. Now, when the United States colored troops came to Florida, they had the drums. After slavery, they had no need for the drum, so they gave them to the ex-slaves. The ex-slaves developed this beat, a special beat, that lasted for 165 years. The last time we did this beat was on December the 26th at Bradfordville Blues Club. Now, after that, the COVID came about and we didn't have it anymore. But I want to say about my grandfather, my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather was a runaway slave. He ran away from North Carolina at the age of 12 years old. He ran to Florida. He ran to Florida, and he settled in Cheers, Florida, where he was a slave. Now let me tell you about running away slave. See, the slaves ran away with the Indians, and the Indians knew all the trails. The slaves knew the methods, so they would raid into South Carolina and they'd come back to Florida, and so this is why Andrew Jackson came to Florida to get the runaway slave. But I like to say about my family. My great-grandfather was named Hunter Hills. He had one son. He married Louise Johnson. He had one son. His name was Henry Hill. Henry Hill lived in Cheers, Florida. He had a grandfather named Ned Johnson. Ned Johnson lived in the St. Peter community called Indian Branch. My grandfather, his grandfather, Ned Johnson, went to Cheers and got him and brought him up to St. Peter area up there. When he was getting older, he sold my grandfather 100 acres of land from the Mississippi Road to the Centerville Road. This is where I was raised, on 60 acres of land. We still own that land today. See, land is wealth. This was called generational wealth. And this was the objective of the slaves when they left slavery. They were identified as property. Property bought property. Because after slavery, they bought 13 million acres of land in the South. Now, and I want to go on to say about my family. On May the 20th, 1865, they were emancipated in Leon County. Now, for the last 150-some years, we have been celebrating the 20th of May. Now, we did it in two parts. The first celebration was at a place called Gum Pond. That's Lake Ella. The reason they call it Gum Pond because it was a lot of frogs. You know, it was a lot of frogs and lily pads. So it moved it from there to Winthrop Plantation. It stayed there for 58 years by the direction of Miss Debbie Edwards. When she got too old to carry it on, it came to my grandfather's property, which was given to him by Ned Johnson, his grandfather. Now, the reason our emancipation lasts so long because my grandfather was not a part of the plantation system. He owned his own property. When the plantation system broke down, all the emancipation dissipated. And we did it at my grandfather's property. Now, I want to say something else about my ancestors. My ancestors, when they left slavery in 1865, they couldn't read or write. They couldn't recognize their name. Now, think about this. At your age, suppose you couldn't read or write. You had skills, but you had no money to do anything. And so when they came out of slavery, they came together to accomplish all of these things. Now, during slavery didn't totally destroy the black family, because they oppressed upon their slave children to depend on their grandmother, grandfather, aunts, uncles, and honorary relatives. This was the pattern. This pattern we used to survive through Reconstruction and the 90 years of Jim Crow. Now, the reason my grandparents and my ancestors celebrate the 20th of May so long, let me read you something about what they did. The meaning of freedom. Freedom meant many things to many people. But the 61,000 slaves, it meant families would stay together. Freedom meant women would no longer be sexually exploited. Freedom meant reading and writing. Freedom meant organizing churches. Freedom meant moving around without obtaining permission. Now, this is why they celebrated that emancipation so many years. Now, let me tell you this. Listen at this. From native shores by Temperance Drive, they saw a appearing sky, and found beneath the miles of heaven desire to be free. And answers rose and prayers array broke on that day of joy. Answer of Freedom Day 100 years ago. My grandmother taught me that when I was 8 years old. When I went on stage to say that, my parents had been celebrating the 20th of May for 70 years. That's amazed me. My grandson, whose name is Hunter Miles Hills IV, he went on stage in 2008 and said something about his grandfather 76 years after they were freed from slavery. So this is our tradition. Now, when we had our 20th of May, we had a stage built on my grandfather's property. It was the May ground. The May ground was located in the pine thickets. Any time of day or night, you could go in the pine thickets and hear this melody as the wind blow through the needles of the pines on the trees like that. And this is where we celebrated our 20th of May. Now, the 20th of May was evolved around children. See, children during slavery, they couldn't read or write. I had no time to really say things to other people. So they taught them. Each child had to go on stage and say a speech, elocution, or recitation. And this is our tradition. Now, after the program, everything was centered around the program. After the program, we would eat lunch, and each family would prepare their meals and bring them there, and they had these blankets. They would sit on the ground and eat the meal in competition with the ants. Okay. After that, that's when the activities started. Now we had the drum beat. Okay. Then we had planting of the maypole. Okay. Then we had ring play, buck dancing, and climbing the greasy pole. And this is what they would do. They would go in the woods and cut down a gum tree and skim all the bark off it and stick it in the ground. And what they would do, they would bring a live hog with a rope on it, tie the hog for the competition. The person who climbed to the top of the pole would get the hog. Most times, the man who brought the hog would take the hog home. He was sure of this. He was sure of that. And the 20th of May meant so. It meant so much to us. You know, when the 20th, what day the 20th of May fell on, that's the day we would celebrate. So naturally, we would wait for a lot of white people. So when that day came, they knew what it meant to us. And they said, this is your day. Okay? And so they would let the people off, and so they could celebrate like that. Now, let me tell you something about the 20th of May. When the sun rose in the east, everybody was excited. But when the sun set in the west, you had to wait for a whole nother year for the celebrate. So this is our tradition. And what we should do, we should teach our children. I don't know how we're going to do this, because in school we don't teach we're not taught our history in general. Now, you take Black History Month, they say something about everybody else. They never say anything about the person who listened at the person who's saying something. And so what we should do is try to teach our children. Now, when I was growing up, they call it borrowing a cup of sugar. You ever borrowed a cup of sugar? Do you have an honorary relative, somebody in your neighborhood, that you can go knock on that door and borrow a cup of sugar? Now, if a person moved in the neighborhood, that's the first thing they would do. Call it be nosy what it was, you know. They would come to your home to borrow a cup of sugar. And that's how they got to be known in the neighborhood like that. So another thing I would like to say to you, I graduated from Florida A&M University. Now, Florida A&M University was founded to educate descendants of Florida slaves. That's what it did. For over 100 and some years, it did exactly what it was founded to do. The children came from every crook and cranny in Florida and came to Florida A&M University and went back and educated descendants of Florida slaves. That's exactly what that's the purpose of it. Now, anybody of any race, color, or creed can go to Florida A&M University. But there are some students who are descendants of slaves attending Florida A&M University. It does exactly what it was founded to do: educate descendants of Florida slaves. Now, when I was in college, I took mechanical drawing, architecture drawing, and from what I learned in college, I applied that. And so what I did, I built replicas, old churches, old schools, everything that represented the way we live. They in the Black Archives on Florida A&M University campus. By chance, if you go up there, you can go and see my display. It's right there. Now, this is a great outing, and I hope we continue to teach our children, because we stand on the backs of our children. And a lot of times we're not teaching our children like we should teach our children. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to see all of you. I wish you well, and good luck to all of you.
Stand up, stand up. Again, this is one of our community's most important culture bearers. On your feet. Okay, thank you so very much, guests. Thank you so very much. And conference attendees and friends, as we bring our program to a close. And I saw, yes, please. Okay, one moment, please. Judge Baker.
My name came up 3 times, so I would be remiss if I didn't say a few remarks. I also want to acknowledge our Honorable City Commissioner Curtis Richardson. He is also present. Please give him a round of applause for being here as well. You know, when Ms. King Pedroso asked me to speak, I felt, I'm an 80s baby. I don't know much about May 20th. I know about Juneteenth all day. But we didn't really celebrate May 20th. And so what I'm seeing here is evidence as why we should. You know, listening to these stories and being reminded from the ladies from Jefferson County about how they spent time in the fields and you know, if you don't work, you don't eat. And just listening to how important community is and how important each and every story is. We're losing that. We're losing that. And so when we see what's happening in our community with kids killing each other every other day, it's because they have lost their identity. And so when the brother said, we got to figure out how to reestablish church as a pillar of our community, you're right on, because we have nowhere else to go. And if these kids continue to lose their identity, where will we be? He said it. We stand on the backs of our children. Where do we see ourselves 20 years from now as this black culture? How are we going to define ourselves 100 years from now? I believe it too. We have the power to be and do whatever we want to do. And so can you just think about it? Because I was thinking about it just sitting there. The war ended 11 days after the war ended. The general came down and announced, y'all are free. Can you imagine them kicking down the shovels, picking up their bags, heading home? Can you picture that? Now, can you picture the sharing of information if we continue to celebrate and honor a May 20th? How that would empower our youth and empower our communities when they hear the stories of what we can do, when they hear the story of, the drumbeat, the originator is right here in our community, the power of what we can accomplish. So thank you. Thank you. I don't know if y'all know the story about how the Cotton Bowl Collective came about, but it originated right here, and her daughters helped her create this beautiful logo. I mean, this is just an evidence of family. Evidence of family and what family can accomplish, and we are all family. So thank you. You deserve to be applauded. Yes.
Love you. And ditto, okay? You know, everything that she just shared with you, for us and each and every member, committee member, from the first session to the last, this is nothing but love. and love of community, of deep concerns about who we are, the fact that our children, again, don't know who we are. And to reiterate, yes, we love Juneteenth, and this has nothing to do with a conflict against Juneteenth. It has everything to do with history and accuracy and helping our children understand your ancestors. They celebrated on May 20th, and again, their quest for autonomy. It's that day. That's why we're here. And all of you who are sitting out there, thank you so much. And I'm not done. I'm not done. And Commissioner Richardson, I saw you. You were on my list. But, okay, I put you down here. And Magistrate Pedroso, I see you too. If you could stand, Magistrate Acelo Pedroso, because that's my right hand right there. Okay. Baby, thank you so much, because he's been living through all of this for a little bit. Thank you for being there. We want to thank every sponsor of the event, the committee, and they've been working diligently for months to make sure this was perfect and beautiful for you. Paige, who's here at Riley, Tom Flanagan at WFSU, WCOT, Jane Body and the family at Evergreen Plantation in Louisiana, Donna Warlick, and the Shade Tobacco Museum in Havana, Florida. And they sent that for us, the Shade Tobacco Museum in Havana wanted you to have that today for this display and that issue of history and the connection of the community and the fact that members of our community, and I'm not just talking about Leon County, that's Gadsden. They knew, again, that this was important today. Dr. Sandra Thompson, who even back in the day, she was the first person I heard mention Mr. Hunter Hill and other connections. She reached out to me. She helped me with Dr. Mobley and others. My mom, Dr. Wilhelmina King. Mom, thank you for everything. For everything. My sister Nikki, who's also here. You know, my dad, who also helped with some of these connections. The Riley Center Museum family has stated Foppin because one of the first places where we talked about Cotton Bowl Collective and specifically rootedness outside of our living room was at a state Foppin conference in Gainesville. And all of those people who were so encouraging, that is the reason we are where we are today, still moving, still growing, still celebrating, and lifting up Afro-Southern heritage. Dr. Aaron Myers, is he here? Dr. Myers? Dr. Aaron Myers, he's here? Okay, because I'm thinking, okay, and I figured you have to come on over here, everything you've done. And Miss Barnes, the two of you, my good friend, Sergeant Major Rozier, who's another one who has worked hard at making this what you see in front of you. Clifton Lewis, you amazing culture bearer, thank you. Keep lifting us up. Brian, you and the young people from Capitol Battery, you made this beautiful, okay? And keep leading them, keep teaching them. The parishes from Monticello as well as the rest of the Monticello family or Jefferson County family, we love you. Thank you. Our Madison family, again, we love you. Thank you, Gadsden. And, of course, Leon, thank you. Alex Williams, if he's still here, the young man who sang so beautifully with that special message for today. And Pastor Eggleston and the First Lady from New Image. I knew they had to step away, but we thank them for bringing their blessings. And, of course, Dr. James, thank you, as well as Judge Baker. And, you know, I can only say, I remember back in the day, Miss Altamise Barnes in a conversation said, Natalie, I know at FAMU, y'all are up there on that hill. She said, but the stories are down here. And this celebration today, and we pray that this is inaugural. It is only the first. and we hope to return. And more than anything, right now, what we want you to do is to travel safely, love your neighbors, love yourselves, and love your heritage. Okay? Because we are proud of where we come from. And I think my heart breaks when many people even say with that slavery thing, that's where I come from. Okay, that's where I come from. And everything we have is from there. And again, when we look at everything they went through, we are the miracle. We are the miracle. Okay, the fact that we are here and we are living and we are contributing as a result of their sacrifices, that's what this event is about. And everyone, again, with that, we send our blessings, that is, in prayers as you travel home. And Reverend Barfield's going to help me right now to send you on your way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let us stand before his presence in honor of all of those that shedded the tears, the sweat, the blood. Now unto him that's able to keep us from falling, the one that have guided us by that shining morning star, the one that guided us and protected us across the middle patches, the one that have steadily kept this people, even in our most vulnerable situations, and the one that have promised to enrich us in all things. Let us go in his peace, his safety, and his security. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you so much.
You don't know the word.